unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, a production of Souls and Liberty brought to you in partnership with MyPillow. Today's show, look at this, today's show is brought to you by the word testy. That was the term being circulated on the media's talking points memo following the Bret Baier interview yesterday, but more on that later.
A lot of Democrats are voting for Harris because of her position on abortion. And a lot of the Democrat Catholics are voting for Trump because of his position on the border and the illegal immigrants.
All right, 19 days to go. By virtually every measure, it's not going well for Kamala. The trend lines, frankly, suck for her. Here to talk about this in this highfalutin, political language is political guru Jim Ellis. I'm your host, Gary Michael Voris, here in Houston. And to talk about special significance of a Wisconsin poll, which, if it held, would be an earthquake, a titanic moment for the Dems. Jim, tell us about this poll. And, this is, I think the word suck is pretty apropos for the Team Harris right now.
Well, maybe we look at it from encouraging from the Donald Trump perspective. So the National Catholic Reporter ran a poll in the battleground states of Catholic voters. And the poll results from Wisconsin and Michigan in particular were very good, showing Trump up 18 points in Wisconsin among Catholic voters. And that's 25% of the population. Wisconsin's one of the heavier Catholic states. And in Michigan, which is about 18% of the population is the Catholic vote there, he's up 12 points. Yeah. And so he was up generally among Catholics in all of those states, but nothing like these two. And those are critical. Yeah. I mean, and actually Michigan and Wisconsin, you would think probably end up going to Harris at the end of the day. But if Trump can win in either of those, that probably clinches the election for him. So it's a significant poll. The other thing was that there needs to be more work done with Catholic Hispanics. Mm-hmm. And Harris was doing much better, about 2/3 of Catholic Hispanics going to her. So there needs to be more work done to get the message to Catholic Hispanics. Among white Catholics, Trump is doing very, very well. And with the black Catholic vote, Harris was about 77, which actually isn't too bad from the black population. Normally they're at 95. So, but it's that Catholic Hispanic vote that needs to improve, and particularly in places like Arizona and Nevada.
Yeah, it is it's one of the shortcomings, I think, and we've covered that. I've personally covered that a lot, that the lack of catechesis on the part of the bishops is just so spotty and so hit and miss that the Catholic Latino population that is so pro-life and pro-family and pro all of that it's like they don't even know about, and I think that's probably intentional on the part of many bishops around the country. When we come back here, we want to talk about the Catholic vote slipping away from her, like we've just covered initially, but I want to get deeper into it. And that, too, is causing a great deal of headaches for Team Evil, not just in those blue wall states, but kind of across the country. And the question is, has she kind of done it to herself? We'll be right back. The establishment has tried to assassinate President Trump twice, but we can't really be shocked that those who slaughter 1 million unborn babies each year would try to kill one more human being who stands in the way of their diabolical agenda. Trump, like every one of us, including all of us at Souls and Liberty, is a sinner. But like all of us, he is in the fight and fighting for all of us to get one more chance, maybe a last chance, to save the republic. We must hang together, or as Benjamin Franklin said, we shall hang separately. And maybe far sooner than many imagine, because communists take over and always persecute Christians and Catholics in particular. Let us help you fight these forces of evil. Become a monthly supporter today so we can continue giving you the information, the tools of our faith, and the support network you need to go out and save souls and save our nation. Join our merry band of happy warriors and click below to get into the fight. We need you, we need each other. Join the resistance. Become a monthly donor today. All right, Jim, welcome back. Every poll says that she continues to underperform with the Catholic vote essentially everywhere, not just the blue wall states. But, you think about all the anti-Catholic stuff that she's got the history of. We've covered on this show plenty of times. Her recent, refusal to show up at the Al Smith dinner. Are they just dismissing the Catholic vote and perhaps at their own peril?
Well, maybe so. And particularly, I would think the astonishing thing, and I know, Gary, you've covered this with Governor Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan with that ridiculous act she pulled by mocking Holy Communion with a Dorito chip to some woman. Yeah. And, Michigan, that may account for 12 points in Trump's favor going there to some degree. I don't think we can let them get away with that. There has to be a penalty to be paid for mocking the Catholic Church the way they do.
Yeah.
And it's really rather astonishing that they're doing that. But that appears to be what they're doing. I guess that's who they really are. But it's up to Trump to identify that Catholic vote that's with him and get them out to the polls. This is the key to the election on both sides. Who can get their votes to the polls to make them count? And that matters. I think the 3 tell states now, and the map has changed. I originally thought it was Georgia. Then we talked on this show many times about the importance of Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And all that's still important, but I think there's 3 now that's going to tell us who's going to win this election. Mm-hmm. And that's North Carolina, number 1, Georgia, number 2, and Pennsylvania, number 3.
Right.
So on election night, and they're all in the Eastern Zone, if Trump is winning those 3, and he has to win North Carolina, that's number 1. That's the most important state now for him. And if he doesn't, he probably loses. Mm-hmm. Because I don't see how he can make up that 16 votes that he has. And there's 24 other states that have voted for him twice, like North Carolina. But those 24 look solid. And that 2nd District of Maine, that's an important slot, too, in the 2 states where the congressional districts have their own vote. That gives him 270 votes with his 25 states, including North Carolina, that voted for him twice. The 2nd District of Maine, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. He wins those states, he wins the election, and it doesn't matter what the rest of the battleground states do. But he's got other options, which was a goal of the Trump campaign, and that is one goal where they have succeeded. There's other ways to win. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, and this is where this Catholic poll comes into play, for the first time we see where he has underpolled regularly in 3 battleground states, and that's Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Nevada.
Right.
And he needs 35 electoral votes to change from what voted for Biden. If you had those 3 states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, remember the Catholic vote up 18, that alone could put him over the top. Mm-hmm. And Nevada, Catholic vote was very important there as well, and he was doing well there, not as well as Wisconsin, but the Catholic vote in all 3 of those states could be very important. But if you put those 3 together, their electoral vote total aggregate equals 35. And the important thing there is
the ding number.
Georgia.
That's it.
Yeah, there it is.
Needs.
That's it. That clinches it. So he is underpolled significantly both in 2016 and 2020 in those 3 states over all the rest of them. And if that's the case again, then things are looking pretty good for him right now.
Do you think that there is... I want to go back to this point because it seems to be the case. But that being said, it seems politically insane from a strategy standpoint that Team Harris and the Democrats, because Gretchen Whitmer isn't officially part of the Kamala campaign, and not in any significant way. I mean, she's a Democrat, obviously. It seems insane to. What's behind them, just crapping all over Catholics the way they do? I mean, it's crazy, putting spies in Catholic churches and mocking the Eucharist, Holy Communion, Gretchen Whitmer, and refusing to go to the Al Smith dinner. And couldn't you just dial it back a little bit, people, and try to make people think that you were okay with Catholics? Strategically, I don't get it. There seems like there's something else going on.
Well, I think it relates to the abortion issue. I mean, they're so committed to that and so driven and so controlled by the Planned Parenthood and the abortion lobby that I think it really relates to that because, And the National Catholic Report poll made an interesting observation, and it said that the groups, when they said why they were voting for one of the two candidates, it was actually sort of against the Catholic teaching. So a lot of Democrats are voting for Harris because of her position on abortion. And a lot of the Democrat Catholics are voting for Trump because of his position on the border and the illegal immigrants, is what the poll said. Well, of course, those are certainly opposite the Catholic teaching on abortion, and opposite what the Pope says regarding the illegal migrants.
Yeah. It does seem that there is this restructuring going on, and it's wonderful that you get to, you can, I mean, I'm always somewhat dubious of polls as far as their predictive value, but a lot of the down in the buried in the crosstabs and all that is some pretty valuable information. And it seems like there's a complete realignment of everything. In particular, they're talking about Catholic stuff. There's this sort of complete realignment among people who claim to be Catholic. Of course, that's going to translate into how they vote. But beyond that, there's a complete realignment going on with the electorate itself. And that's something I want to talk about when we come back with you. If she's doing so poorly, which she seems to be, across almost every single group that you can imagine on the board, why are things still close, if indeed they actually are close? We'll be right back.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on the screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever on TV, including my standard size MyPillow, only $14.88. They've never been offered this low before. We have limited quantities at this price, so limit's going to be 10, and once they're gone, they're gone.
No matter who wins in November, we have to embrace that we are living in a post-Christendom culture. And the heart of that is a rejection of the gospel. As one item on our agenda to combat this, Souls and Liberty is hosting our first annual retreat at sea. You might be familiar with the annual event we produced for over 10 years at Church Militant. Dr. Jules Gomez, our Rome correspondent, and I are going to be doing the presenting, and the theme is Christians in Exile Triumphing in Adversity, which provides a whole range of discussions to think about. Now, we sail out of Galveston, Texas to the Western Caribbean November 10th to the 17th, yes, right after the election. I think all of us are probably going to need it one way or the other. Please join us for serious discussion, spiritual preparation, and bonding, very important, bonding with fellow Catholics. Registration information is provided below and on our site at soulsandliberty.com/retreat-at-sea 2024. So sign up and we hope to see you there. All right, welcome back, Jim. Who are the voters that are actually keeping her afloat? Because she seems to be losing ground everywhere, even among black voters and Hispanic voters. She's not locked those down. So who's keeping her afloat here?
No, I mean, having them have Barack Obama go to Pennsylvania and lecture black males as to why they should vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, if that doesn't tell you where their campaign is, I don't know what does. Right. But they're still not dead. I mean, the problem is you've got such a locked constituency on both sides. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, there's so many people getting government transfer payments that they don't want to lose those. And that's the bulk of her support. And it's a huge number, and that's what keeps them alive. As Newt Gingrich used to say years ago, the Democrats buy their votes with your tax money. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of truth to that. And that's, I think, why you see that. And you're right, it is starting to turn. The middle class, the working class becoming more Republican and open to that. And the elitists, the elite rich, now in the corner of the Democrats. And I'm amused by this Kamala Harris commercial. And I just completed a 2-week trip doing briefings all around the country. I was in 5 different states, and every place I saw her ad where she talks about, blaming business for the high prices, number one, price gouging that was caused really by their outrageous spending. And secondly, the fact that she will basically solve this by taxing billionaires and making them pay their fair share. Well, first of all, she's not going to really do that because that's a lot of her constituency. Right. And so I went up and I did some research. Do you know how many billionaires there are in this country? And the answer is 750 approximately. And their estimated net worth is huge, 4.7 trillion on the aggregate. But that won't, even if she took all their money,
Right.
that would not fund the government, even for a year.
Right.
Even for a year. It wouldn't even fund all those bills they passed in the last Congress, which was 6 trillion.
Right.
So that talk about a disingenuous ad.
Right.
And I'm surprised that the Trump campaign hasn't jumped on that and explained that better. But this idea that, oh, well, we're just going to tax the billionaires and solve all this tax problem or solve the revenue problem. I mean, it's absurd on its face. And she's not going to do that to her key supporters like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. And so to think she's coming after them, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And even again, if she took all the billionaires' money, it's still a drop in the bucket compared to the budget being 35 trillion in debt, the national debt, $35 trillion. I saw an estimate that if it was paid down by $1 million a day, every day, it would take 82,000 years to pay off. That's how big it is. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, that simply is not sustainable here. Looking sort of at her constituency, and yeah, I think we've touched on here, this sort of realignment, and because it really is. I mean, the Republican Party has, at least the MAGA movement, and to the extent that there's a big overlap with the Republican Party there, maybe not the establishment, but the rank and file, is kind of the party of common sense. Just, hey, why are you letting males play in, girls' sports and beat the hell out of them? It's all that just sort of like no duh kind of stuff. And that seems to appeal much more to sort of the average working class person. I mean, there has been a switch, and it's completely pinnable on Donald Trump. He just talks to people normally, and there it is. On the other side, it seems like who might be keeping her afloat, not just the elites per se, but the white, abortion crazy, college educated women.
Yeah.
And there's this
definitely
breakdown, so there's this number, which is, much smaller than the working class number, which comprises about 2/3 of the electorate. So it looks like this is going to be a race between the wild-eyed crazy, I want to be able to abort until they're 23 years old, versus the much larger number of middle-class average Joes. And it just seems like Trump has to lock down enough of them, and in there are, whites, blacks, Latinos, the whole bit. Seems he has to lock down a bunch of those, and there's a big number of Catholics in that group as well. So does she have enough pull simply on the abortion issue with these crazy, 45, 50-year-old, white suburban women who just want to kill children versus what he has over there? Because that looks like how it's breaking down.
But then you have to add in all the people that get the transfer payments and get some payment from the government. And that's largely going to be with her. Do not count them out by any stretch, regardless of what's going on at this point, because the other thing that they have in their advantage, their ground operation is a lot better than Trump's.
Yeah,
a lot better.
Heard that.
And that is important in terms of figuring out where their voters are and making sure they get to the polls. I was on a panel. I did a presentation yesterday with a Democrat analyst from both sides, and he is a very honest guy. I really like him, and we were talking about this. Now he had said some very interesting things, and we were talking about Wisconsin. He said the one state he's absolutely confident they win is Wisconsin, and they'll win it by 30,000 votes. I said, really? I said, I would have thought you would say that about Michigan. And he basically said no to Michigan and Pennsylvania. He was not confident in either of those. But he was confident by 30,000 votes in Wisconsin. And he's leading the ground operation in those states. And it's very good. And the Trumps it's not going to come close to what they're doing. So that's an important thing that's in their favor. Mm-hmm. And the people that are locked into their side and the groups and the abortion issue constituency that you mentioned, Gary, those are all big numbers, and they're in key states. So it's still very much up in the air and cannot be taken for granted. I mean, she could definitely still win, as bad as her campaign is and as bad as her presentations are. Right. Let's talk about this Fox News interview. Yeah, that went about as badly as it could go for her. Yeah. But the swing voters probably aren't watching that. I mean, the hardcore Republicans are watching that. The people that are already voting for Donald Trump are more likely to watch that interview than anybody else that's kind of undecided. So I don't think that's going to end up hurting her too much.
Right. Yeah, some polls came out this morning, as a matter of fact. Marist has her up by 5 nationally. The Fox News poll, interestingly enough, has Trump up by 2. Those Fox News polls never seem to land in Trump's favor. And of course, you're asking me.
No, they're not that. They're not that good. The Fox News polls are not that good, and the Marist polls tend to skew Democrat. But the national number doesn't matter. What matters is those numbers in the key states. And even in that Fox poll, they were saying, well, they've got him up 2 nationally, but down 6 within the battleground states. I said, that doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
I mean, there's almost no mathematical way that happens there.
Right.
But I haven't seen that poll. I want to take a look at it. But I don't put that much stake in the Fox numbers. I really don't.
Yeah, they always seem to be weird. I was looking at those.
Yes, they do. They always seem to be weird. Yeah.
Speaking of weird, is one of the things I've been.
There are other pollsters, by the way. There are others that have Trump up nationally as well.
Right. Yeah.
So, and it's the Marist one with 5. I think that's an outlier. There's no way she's up 5 points nationally.
Oh no, not at all. One of the things I look at every day, and I'll just use this as my final, and let you respond to it before we wrap up. But I go on the Real Clear Politics page, and I look at up in the upper right-hand corner. There's the national aggregate, and then right below that is the battleground aggregate. And I have noticed, not quite every day, but every 2 or 3 days, she loses 0.1 or 0.2 on her national average, and Trump gains 0.1 or 0.2 on the battleground average. She's now, I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think it's 1.7. She was at 2.4 in that 2 weeks ago, and she's down now 0.7, I think it is, 0.7 or 0.8. And Trump, he was at 0.1 in the battleground states. He's now up at 0.7 or 0.8. It seems like there's a inverse correlation there. When she loses a little bit nationally in the RCP national average, he gains a little bit in the battleground average.
Well, that does make sense because the battlegrounds are so important to that, to the nationals. But the thing to remember here on these polls is that Donald Trump is doing better in these polls now than he did in 2020, certainly, and even in 2016 when he won.
Right.
So in these battleground states, he is in better shape in all of them than he was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Now remember that the national vote last time wasn't close, but the state votes were.
Right.
I mean, he really won that. Biden really only won by 40,000 votes.
Right.
When you add Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia together.
Right.
That's it. And that tells you how important the national vote is, because I think he won the national vote by 7 million, because it's all coming out of New York and California.
Right.
And this is why the Electoral College exists.
Right.
To protect the small states in the rural areas, to make sure they have a voice. The founding fathers saw that even back then,
right?
That they didn't want bigger cities controlling an election,
right,
at the expense of the rural areas and the agricultural community.
Sure.
And that's why the Electoral College exists. And though the left hates it, it's working exactly as it was designed. It protects the small states and the rural areas, gives them a voice.
Which is why they want to blow it up. All right, Jim.
Yes.
Thank you, as usual. Great insights. We're going to be coming back to you much more frequently than we already do here as we wind down. Just 19 days to go. Great discussion as always. Thank you, brother. God bless. All right, we'd like you to take a look at this graphic for a moment, if you could, please. CNN, Business Insider, Associated Press, even Newsmax, all within minutes of the end of that Fox News interview of Kamala last night, used the same word, testy, to describe the exchange between Bret Baier and Kamala. It's not that the word doesn't fit. It was testy from the opening salvo to the last, really. But curious is that all these outfits would use the exact same word within almost the exact same time frame. That suggests a uniformity, not of thought or not just of thought, although that certainly does exist in spades in the legacy media world, but more so that there is a single source they're all getting their orders from, or their thought or their talking points memo from, as we call. So there are many words that could have been used to describe the tone of the exchange: combative, argumentative, irritable, volatile, and so forth. How is it that all these different media outlets each happened on the exact same word within minutes of each other? In fact, I'd make the argument that while testy wasn't a bad choice, combative would have been much more accurate. It's because of the groupthink, certainly, sure. But it's also because of the inherent laziness of many people in the legacy media who simply repeat what another outlet says the moment they hear it. But given the high stakes and the pre-publicity this sit-down interview received, what happened here with this word testy suggests something else altogether: a coordination. In fact, I'd put it forth that it suggests, actually proves, a level of coordination, which further means that there is a coordinator, a person or a team who tell the media how to present their stories. And frankly, that's true. And here was a live fire example of it, living proof. There is simply no way that the editorial folks in 5 different outlets all over the country each came up with the exact same word to the exclusion of many other, some of them better words, all within minutes of each other. What, did one of them think it up and then have a conference call and they all vote on it? Were they all on some Zoom call with each other holding some kind of competition like a parlor game? Or did they all receive some direction at all the same time on how to craft and then present the story? That, I would submit, is much more likely. Being in news is a bit like being a cop or a prosecutor. You got to collect all the evidence and make a case. You look at what's before you, the evidence, and then you start asking questions, begin eliminating possible options until one option sort of lights up, the likely killer, the main suspect, or whatever. The media is at a low point of dishonesty, not just partisanship per se, but actual dishonesty like no time in my 40 plus years in it. I've never seen anything like this. And when a person, an organization, a political party lies routinely as their standard practice, be sure that you are dealing with the demonic, the father of lies. The media, like many judges, educational institutions, prosecutors, and so forth, have each come under the sway of the diabolical. He controls them because they do his will. There are millions of examples that we can trot out to prove this, and we have, as a matter of fact, done this routinely on this show and many others. This one, because it's recent, proves the point yet again. Competing news organizations competing for ad dollars are coordinating their coverage, and we all know why. To quote Kamala, we all know what we're talking about. God love you. I'm Gary Michael Boris.